Hello everyone, I'm going to be going out later to a wildflower meadow. There's some wild orchids looking really lovely, so I'm going to show you my setup. I'm using a mix of digital and old sort of manual lenses. I've got some Canon FD lenses. So I've got my Micro Four Thirds camera, Panasonic G9, and I'm going to be using this cheap dummy adapter. This one's made by KNF Concept. So basically it has Micro Four Thirds on this side and Canon FD on this side. So about 25 years ago when I started, I bought into the Canon system, and I still have my Canon F1, and I have almost sold it over the years, but I'm glad I kept hold of it because I use it quite a lot now. And these three lenses here are the original lenses I had. These go back to the 1980s. This is a 28mm f2.8, so it's my wide angle. This is my standard lens, my 50mm 1.4, so that's quite a nice fast prime. And this is my 135 f2. There aren't a lot of these around. This is a really lovely lens, and when I started doing sport, and I used to use this at football matches for my goal mouth lens. After I sort of come off the long lens, any action that was around the goal mouth, I would use this 135, so that's quite a favourite of mine. And this one I picked up quite recently. It's a 70 to 210 zoom f4, and yeah, so it's a really nice lens, but it doesn't have a lot of love as far as you know, price goes. You can pick these up quite cheaply for about, you know, 20–30 pounds or so. So one of the reasons I like using these manual lenses is the fact that they are, you know, manual focus lenses. They are really smooth, really nice action on them. You've got hard stops at the end. Unlike the modern autofocus lens, this is a Panasonic 12–35 2.8, and it's a really good autofocus lens, but it's not very good at manual focus. A lot of these modern day autofocus lenses use this sort of focus by wire setup, and I don't know quite how it works, but the manual focus side of it is not very good at all, and you can't get repeatable focus throws. So if you want to focus on something in the distance and then come back to something in the foreground and then go back to the distance, you won't get that same focus throw. Unlike manual lenses, you know exactly where you are, you know exactly if you want to go from 3 feet to 15 feet and then come back to 3 feet, it just works. So that's just such a plus using these lenses. So on the filming side, it's really good, and they work just as well as photography lenses as well. You can pick these up fairly cheaply. My 135 has got a good bit of value to it. It's probably £300–400, but this 50mm is probably about, you know, up to about £100, and this is probably up to about £50 for the 28. So yeah, other things you've got to take into consideration if you're using Micro Four Thirds camera, because it's got a smaller sensor. There's a 2x crop there, so my 12–35 is the equivalent of a 24–70. So if I put any other sort of full frame lens onto it, it's going to double the focal length. So effectively my 50mm becomes a 100mm lens. So it does mean that I don't really have the choice of any sort of wide angles when I go out using these. Most of my focal lengths are going to be a bit longer, and this one, being a 210, will actually go up to the equivalent of a 420mm lens. So it's great for those long lens situations, and I'm going to be using that quite a bit today, photographing these flowers. So basically you mount it onto the camera, just line up the dots, so that goes onto the camera, and you turn that to lock, and you get your lens and just line up all those red dots, and you're on. So on here you have this ring which moves from left to right. So if you move it to the left, it locks it, and if you move it to right, it opens it. So basically what that's doing is it's just controlling the aperture blades of your lens. So if you If you have it to the open position on the right, the aperture blades will be fully open. They'll be at the lens's maximum aperture, so in this case it will just be 1.4, so it's just letting in as much light as possible. So that's quite good for, you know, if you're in low light situations and you want a lot of light coming in. If you want to stop your lens down, say you want to shoot at 5.6, you would need to set it to 5.6 and then lock it down. So you move this ring to the left hand side so it's got lock. So basically you will then be closing down the aperture blades to 5.6, so you'll have less light coming through, so when you're viewing it you will see it at 5.6. It's like using a sort of depth of field preview button, which you may be used to. So if you're composing a shot and using it in the open mode because you want lots of light coming through, if your aperture is set at 5.6 and you have it in the open mode, you won't actually be shooting it at 5.6. You have to remember to turn that to lock. So you need to know what your exposure is going to be, whether you are taking it, you know, by locking the aperture down or taking your own handheld reading. But you must remember to lock it down. If you leave it in the open position, you will overexpose your shot. Yeah, so that's my setup, and I'm going to head out now, and yeah, so I'll see you later. So luckily there's a little path that runs through here. These wild orchids are looking absolutely lovely, so making sure I don't tread on any. So basically here's my setup. This is really handy having this flip up screen, so I don't have to get behind the camera or get down too low. I can kind of tilt it up. I've got the image here. I'm sort of focused on this middle orchid here. So you've got to be really careful with the focusing. Even though it's on a tripod, you just need to touch that and it's all over the place. So let that settle down. Yeah, that's fine there. Yeah, so with this I've got a long shot. I'm shooting on closer to about 200 on this Canon lens, so it's more like about 400 once you take in the crop factor, and it's just really sort of long, compressed perspective. It's just a mass of orchids and dandelion sort of puffballs and backlit, so it's looking really nice. I'm just, you know, wait for the light to come out, which it has done now. Everything's backlit, it's lovely. Yeah, so just focused up on one orchid. I just want a really shallow depth of field. I'm just going to shoot at f4. I don't really want loads and loads of it in focus. I just want it to be really soft and subtle, dropping away. So I'm actually preferring just to lie down rather than use a tripod, because you're working on a long lens. You just got to keep making these little tiny alterations. It's just so much easier to just kind of roll your shoulders around rather than just keep moving that tripod, which becomes a bit of a pain. Working on a long lens, through the grass, I'm just picking up these little blocks of colour where these buttercups and orchids are, you know, I'm shooting through them. So they're lovely and out of focus, and then you just get one little sharp point in the background, which is, that's all I'm looking for. So there you go, Micro Four Thirds with Canon FD lenses. It's yeah, it's been a good afternoon. I managed to get a few shots with this 28 towards the end, which is now, well, it's actually about a 56, so it's not particularly wide. I could have done with something a little bit wider, but I like that sort of shooting on a long lens in this sort of situation. I was mostly shooting backlit all afternoon. But I did shoot a little bit with a light towards the end because it was really lovely. It just got really golden, so I got down a little bit low. Anyway, I've been putting up these photos as I've gone, and so yeah, let me know what you thought of the photos. Let me know if you do something similar using older lenses adapted to whatever you're using. I will shoot some film very soon, so I know most of you come for the film, so I will get back to it on the film. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you later. Bye bye.